In today's news, with the BVI down to 10 cases, Premier Fahie says the UK is very proud of our COVID-19 effort, and Wuhan lawyer sentenced to 4 years in prison for reporting the first COVID-19 outbreak.
As well as Boxing Day races receive great support this Christmas season, as well as VP Kamala Harris to receive COVID-19 vaccine. All this and so much more when 284 News returns. Welcome everybody. Today is Tuesday, December 29th, 2020. Just a few days after Christmas, we are coming to you live straight out of the British Virgin Islands. I am Kyla Kenesha Forbes.
And I am Javon Wilson. We are so thrilled that you're here wrapping up the year of 2020 with us, but there's so much for us to get into as we wind down. First off, the Ministry of Health and Social Development, the Public Health Division, has completed its contact tracing for persons attending both the Willie T Restaurant and Bar and posters at Sophers Hall between December 11th to December 14th. And based on the reports, no trace of COVID-19 transmission has been found at those establishments. Kyla, I know this really comes as a sigh of relief, being that the persons who would have breached the quarantine, those were the places that they frequented during that time. So very happy to see that they're in the all clear. As well as BVI Islanders, belongers, residents, as well as homeowners are now being notified that they are to complete a home quarantine checklist in preparation for inspection when applying for approval to come home, especially if they want to quarantine at home, that is. The checklist can be accessed at bvi.gov.vg, and of course, persons can click on the revolving banner on the home page, or you can type in home quarantine list in the search bar to complete that list, or as well, you can email the home quarantine bvi at hotmail or ehd@gov.vg for queries. You can also call 468-5110. And finally, great news, we are finally down to 10 COVID-19 cases, of course, from an initial 13 just a few days ago. So here we see some more recoveries. We've had 82 recoveries to date, now down to 10 cases, and 1 death. And I think that's a remarkable achievement, Kyla, considering we've had 93 confirmed cases in the BVI.
Most definitely. When it comes to COVID-19, I think it's very important to count those small wins. So those true recoveries is definitely a great news for the territory. Now, also in this newscast, we will be covering basically the Christmas season and one of those annual events that persons really love to go to during the season, which would be the annual Boxing Day racing. So we have the details for you viewers about that. But also earlier today, a major earthquake hit Croatia, leaving 1 person dead, as well as we see where this new variant of the COVID-19, a new strain that is continuing to spread globally. They're now saying that they have discovered a person who died in Germany last month, which have been November, to have had this new strain. So there's a lot of new development surrounding this new strain. But also, we remember the first person to ever receive the COVID-19 vaccine,
yes,
which was Miss Margaret Keenan. She is actually back for her second dose of the COVID-19 vaccine, because we know that some of those vaccines you have to take in 2 stages, and this one she had to go back after 21 days. So she's back now after that 21 days and taking her second dose of the vaccine. Of course, many speculations and persons are, the jury is still out as it pertains to the COVID-19 vaccine, but developments are forever coming up across the world as it pertains to this vaccine.
All right, viewers, we're going to jump straight into our newscast for today. Now, Premier of the Virgin Islands and Minister for Finance, Honorable Andrew A. Fahie, in his holiday message to the territory, spoke to some of the unprecedented challenges and victories of the territory in 2020. Honorable Fahie is also very proud of the government's effort to steer the territory forward in the face of adversity, but also acknowledging that the United Kingdom is very pleased as well. Listening.
There have been a few minor bumps during the rollout. This is not uncommon when you begin to transition theory into practice. We must remember COVID-19 did not come with a playbook, and every country is writing its own playbook as they try to identify the protocols and processes that work in their unique situation. But may I say, we are in a process of continuous improvement. As new and unique scenarios present themselves in the real-world application of our COVID-19 management systems, we are making adjustments that further strengthen our protocols. As a territory, we must join in expressing thanks and congratulations to our businesses for completing the Gold Seal certification. We thank them for reinforcing the protocols so that we can have economic activity and so that people can return to having jobs, while keeping customers and workers safe. Your government believes in the strength of our local businesses and the strength of the people of the Virgin Islands. We Virgin Islanders are the ones who must control our destiny, as we have been doing for generations. Once again, I say congratulations to all the businesses and individuals who have been able to meet the qualifying requirements for the many different business stimulus packages made possible by your government. I am pleased that many of our people have been able to benefit from the economic stimulus program. We did our best with the funding that was available to ease some of the financial strain on you, our people, and businesses during this challenging time. Indeed, these are challenging times for economies around the world, large, medium, and small. What we have been able to achieve with our limited resources is exemplary, and your government has been told this by the UK Minister for the Overseas Territories in recent correspondence. We are pleased that our people and businesses continue to put the stimulus funds to good use, abiding by the terms and conditions of these grants.
That was the Honorable Premier Fahie, of course, Premier Andrew A. Fahie, just speaking to not only the challenges, but some of the victories we've had in 2020. And Kyla, once the pandemic hit, one of the things we were looking forward to is that much needed help from the United Kingdom.
Yes.
But the strange thing was, or I think the difficult challenge in this situation was the fact that it wasn't just the BVI experiencing these challenges. It was something that we saw across the world, and especially in the United Kingdom. So some of that help that we were expecting did not trickle down to the BVI. And here the Premier is very proud of the fact that as a territory, just based on our internal tax dollars, we were able to do so much. Lots of money has been spent on retrofitting the isolation unit, on building not only the isolation unit, but also laboratories to ensure that we can test in-house, but also training of persons within the territory. And I think collectively, it's something that we can be proud of, but it's even more refreshing to hear the United Kingdom acknowledging that as a territory, even though we had limited resources, we have done well with the resources that we do have.
I think as we watch across the region and entire world, as the world continues to battle with COVID-19, I think we ourselves should be proud as to how we dealt with COVID-19 and our government, how they dealt with COVID-19. So I think that acknowledgement from the UK, yes, it is great to hear, but just knowing within ourselves that we have done a great job and we want to continue doing a great job as our fight is not over yet.
Absolutely. We were not discounting the challenges that we've had, especially when you think about businesses and employees within the hospitality industries, who I think were the ones who really felt the blunt of it. And the stimulus. And again, working with limited resources has been a real challenge, but nevertheless, we have to acknowledge that so far we have tried our best to make the best out of the situation.
Most definitely. Now, as we move on, in the British Virgin Islands, as we know, the annual Boxing Day races is a highly anticipated event right here in the territory. Now, this year's event was held under the theme Keeping Hope, Culture, and Faith in 2021 in the BVI Alive. Now, on Sunday, December 27th, 2020, hundreds of fans gathered on the Ellis Thomas Downs VI. We see where they gathered there for the horse racing, Javon, and we see where the VI Horse Owners Association, their chairperson, Lesmore Smith, he stated that the day was a good one and was pleased that the fans turned up to support the sport. He is hoping that 2021 will be a better year for the association with more races. Now, when Mr. Smith was asked when can the next event be anticipated, he said, and I quote, "I would say for Easter, we're going to probably going to have something before our Easter, which is our next celebration." He also expressed his hopes to see a greater participation from local horses to take part as the pandemic is hindering U.S. Virgin Islands horses from traveling to the BVI. Now, the first race of the Boxing Day races was the Bob and Letty Hodge Sprint Classics. Now, Nadine's Image from Top Priority Race Stables won against the contender Uncle Mace from Mission House Racing Stables. Now, the second race of the day, which was dubbed as the K&J Trucking Classics, was scratched. Warriors Ridge from Missions House Racing Stables and Courageous and Honor from Top Priority Racing Stables was slated to race. Now, the highly anticipated Ellis Thomas Classics, the featured race of the day, was won by Moonlight Bandit, which is owned by Mr. Dion Stevens. Now, Mr. Stevens confidently said, and I quote, "We raced before and he lost and all that, but through the pandemic, he got a good rest. And then the guys decided we just have to keep a little race. I tell them I'm coming to beat them this time," end quote. Now, Javon, as it pertains to horse racing, yes, we saw the event being affected by COVID-19 as everything else has been. I'm really happy to see this Boxing Day we were able to bring it back and that persons came out in numbers to support. Of course, probably did not have as much races and as much horses, but I'm glad in-house, you know, the U.S. Virgin Islands horses were not able to make it, but in-house we still kept our races. Good competition, and persons loved it. So we definitely want to congratulate Mr. Dion Stevens and his entire stable for that win.
Absolutely. Well, COVID doesn't stop culture. And I think that really wraps it up. So viewers, we're going to go to a very quick commercial break. We have your Caribbean year in review as it relates to COVID-19. We're taking a look across the region at how not only the transitions, but how we've dealt with it as a region as well. And the Ministry of Education in the Bahamas is being urged by Bahamians to repeat the 2020 school year. That's a challenge we're all dealing with across the region as well. All that and so much more when 284 News returns.
The win! Oh!
What the hell?
I'm freaking out!
Is time.
live and direct from the beautiful British Virgin Islands.
What's poppin', what's really good, what's happening, what's up?
Davis has won it for the Lakers!
Viewers, welcome back to 284 News. Now, as we say goodbye to the year 2020, there's lots to go over as it relates to COVID-19, especially here in the Caribbean. Firstly, as witnessed by the still growing number of coronavirus cases in the region, sunlight did not kill COVID-19, okay? The virus, which emerged from Wuhan, China, made its way across Europe and into America and eventually snuck into the Caribbean through the cruise ship industry and return flights. So here's just a little look at the region, the changes it brought about, all the ups and downs as well. As we think about the illnesses and the loss of life, the Dominican Republic was definitely the first country to report a case in the Caribbean in March of 2020 when a tourist from Italy arrived on a cruise ship. From there, the number of confirmed COVID-19 cases began to free fall in the Caribbean as more people continued to enter the region. Now, as of December 29th, 2020, the Caribbean recorded 355,415 confirmed cases with 5,789 deaths and 218,228 recoveries. Again, that number is 218,228 recoveries. Huge deal. Now, the Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico, and French Guyana are the top 3 countries in the Caribbean with the highest number of confirmed cases. In terms of CARICOM, the islands with the most active cases as of December 29th were Jamaica with 2,273 cases, the Bahamas with 1,487, Haiti at 1,140, and Belize at 926. Now, masks, social distancing, and curfews. I think 3 terms that we have grown to know over this year that we don't necessarily love. But being told to tone down your social behavior is definitely something that us as Caribbean people, we were not looking forward to that and certainly not accustomed to that. Now, the wearing of masks in the hot sun, not being able to, greet friends with hugs and kisses, copious amounts of hand sanitizing, and of course being told not to lime in large groups really took a toll on Caribbean people's social lives. Many islands declared state of emergencies, curfews, bans, fines for breaking quarantine, and mandatory mask wearing laws to stem, of course, the spread of the virus. Now, when we think about the economic fallout, this was huge in the region as well, especially since we are such a region that depends on tourism. Now, this pandemic sent almost every country into an economic deficit. Stimulus packages had to be introduced in most Caribbean islands for people to survive, as the pandemic wreaked havoc on the livelihood of citizens who were unable to work due to tough restrictions. Now, while remote work was an option for certain sectors, those islands which rely heavily on the tourism sector to employ their citizens suffered the most. According to the International Labour Organization, ILO, the coronavirus pandemic resulted in the loss of at least 34 million jobs in Latin America and the Caribbean. The Economic Commission for Latin America, as well as the Caribbean, which is called ECLAC, says in 2020, the Caribbean region would have experienced a drop of 7.9% in gross domestic product. Now, there was another transition, of course, that where we saw everything going to online, all of our services. Then there was of course, the transition of that world. So now with more people being forced to stay at home, Caribbean countries had to fully embrace the digital age. Banking, the paying of bills, classes, and work meetings, they were all pushed online through apps, whether or not you were prepared for it. Procuring laptops as well as tablet devices also became the #1 priority for many islands as online learning had to be implemented. School children across the region continued their education online, with only a few islands resuming face-to-face learning in the latter part of the year. But we do know, Kyla, that definitely came with some challenges. There were a lot of hiccups as well as it relates to exams across the region. The coronavirus pandemic, apart from forcing schools to go online, really pushed the education sector to the limits With the hosting of regional examinations, the Caribbean Examinations Council, CXC, held fast to the July 2020 date for the start of CSEX exams, with some CARICOM territories utilizing e-testing and those without infrastructure sticking to paper. What happened next was a complete disappointment, anger, and frustration when the results were released, as students across the territories complained about low and ungraded CSEC as well as CAPE subjects. Then, as it relates to our leaders, there was no way that the coronavirus pandemic could have been prevented from entering the Caribbean. And with that being said, the region's leaders showed true fortitude. The only Caribbean leader to fall ill in the latter part of the year was the Prime Minister of Belize, Mr. John Brasino, who recovered from the virus on December 7th. Other than that, the region's leaders remained healthy. Now, Viera's Prime Minister of St. Martin, Sylvia Jacobs, we do remember this. She made international headlines for the tough stance she took as a female leader for keeping her citizens safe and, of course, in line during the pandemic. Now, this is a video that really went viral across social media. So if you missed it, listen in.
Stop moving. Simply stop moving. If you do not have the type of bread you like in your house, eat crackers. If you do not have bread, eat cereal, eat oats, sardines. You're supposed to have a 2-week supply for hurricane. And at the beginning of this, I said, prepare your disaster kit as if you would for a hurricane. That meant some people went out and buy toilet paper and water. The water is not going to stop. The toilet paper is still in the stores. What you need is food. You need to ensure that you have food, because if I have to take everybody who is saying that, at least 50%, shut it down completely, regardless. Food will also not be possible for 2 weeks for you to buy, because the workers in the food market will also have to stay home. Keep that in mind. But do not run to the supermarket today to buy for a month. As I said, buy for 1 to 2 weeks.
Now, Kyla, if you don't have bread, eat crackers. I think that was literally the funniest thing we heard from politicians across the world in response to COVID-19. It was funny, but very strict.
Right.
Because what we found was persons were not taking the COVID restrictions very serious. And we've been told over and over again, even now with the COVID-19 vaccine, life is not, I don't think, nowhere near in the future going to return to normal.
Exactly.
So we just have to adapt and try our best to adapt to this new way of living. But I think it's really interesting as we reflect on the 2020 events for COVID-19.
Most definitely. And this next story that we're going to get into really speaks to the changes and the challenges that we've had across the region in our education sector. Mm-hmm. But as you basically spoke on that story, I remember seeing a report speaking about the Caribbean as a whole breaking away from tourism being its only pillar, economic pillar, and I think more and more being a hurricane-prone region. And now with the pandemic and COVID-19, I think we see many regions really and truly pushing the envelope to develop new pillars, but I think this year has really spoken to the importance of that. But now in this next story, the Bahamas Ministry of Education is being urged to repeat the 2020 education year based on the results of this year's national examination results. Now, in a recent statement, the president of the Bahamas Union of Teachers, Belinda Wilson, made the recommendation and pointed out that the exam results, that saw a decline in 2020 when compared to 2019. Now, according to Wilson, the education system has continuously failed the children of the Bahamas. She said, and I quote, "I strongly recommend that the Ministry of Education stop, review, cancel, pause, and consider students having the opportunity to repeat the 2020 school year, and that the social promotion practices cease forthwith. It is so sad but true. The educational system has failed the children of this nation over and over and over again." The head of the union stated that the results from the local examinations were not surprising. She went on to say it, and I quote, "From the onset, I advocated for sitting of the exams to be cancelled and that the students be awarded predicted grades if this method was used as it was used in the United Kingdom and in 160 countries and 10,000 institutions, then 100% of our students would have received grades." She further said, then today, the Ministry of Education would not be lamenting on the fact that the number of candidates that sat the exams was substantially lower in 2019. I contend that 2021 exam results will be even worse and participation even less than 2020 because the students this year have had so many interruptions with an inoperable and inadequate virtual platform. Now, schools started mid-October. The content and syllabus for the 2021 examinations, most schools are behind schedule, she said. Now, in the statement, Wilson noted that the grades awarded in the local examination actually declined by 21.68%. She said, and I quote, "So with these dismal results and the acknowledgement of the inaccuracies of the virtual platform, I ask the following questions. What changes have been made in place to ensure that 2021 exams will not be repeated, a repeat of 2020? What policies will be adopted based on data from these exam results?" She lamented that students who receive very low grades such as E, F, and U will not get jobs and will not get accepted into college and university with these grades. But I ask again, are there any plans for the students to retake these examinations under more conducive circumstances? I note that there are no plans for students to repeat the 2020 school year. Our prayers and hearts are with the children of the Bahamas. Lord, deliver them from the hands of this visionlessness. Now, this Miss Wilson, she's really adamant, and I'm really happy to see someone fighting for the students over in the Bahamas. But as we look across the entire world, virtual learning and the abruptness that territories had to kind of jump into this virtual world and this virtual way of learning, it was very difficult. But I think she asked some really important questions. Now, what is the plan? Yes, we had to do this, but what is the plan? What is next? Because very good point that these students might not get into university, and not necessarily fault of their own. It's been a very difficult year, but something has to be done. And I think this is just an example in the Bahamas, but this can be applied across the entire region.
I think when we think about, and I'm glad you said across the region, because even here in the BVI, when we reflected on how this pandemic has affected our students in the BVI, it's a struggle. It's a real struggle because our students have barely recovered from the disruptions of Hurricanes Irma and Maria, and having to go to school in conditions that were not conducive for learning. When you think about the infrastructure they had to sit in and the shift system, it was a great disadvantage. So barely being able to recover from that system and jumping straight into a pandemic had to have been challenging. But not only for those reasons, also when you think about transitioning to the online system, you have to consider the constraints of internet service that we have not only here in the BVI but across the region. It's a challenge. You have to think about students who do not have the proper devices. Even though our education system has been able to provide laptops and other devices, it's still not sufficient for the need that we are seeing across the territory. And I think with a 21.68%, we should be considering a retake of exams, because while we might think COVID-19 is just affecting us for this year and maybe the students for next year, the effects lasts for a lifetime.
Very much
because
so.
you set students back for such a long time. And this is why we're pushing for persons to really adapt to the times that we're living in, as opposed to transitioning to something else. let's adapt to living with COVID-19 and get our children back to the schools.
Most definitely. Now, viewers, that is it for today's news roundup. We will see you again tomorrow, but you can check us for daily updates at 284media.com. And we do want to remind you that tomorrow we will be doing our end of year review,
Yes.
12 p.m. live here on 284 Media. So that is definitely exciting stuff that you would want to tune into. I am Kyla Kenesha Ford.
And my name is Javon Wilson. Don't miss it, 12 p.m. tomorrow, and join us again 6 p.m. tomorrow. Take care.
Bye.